Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Going to give the the Zoom meeting a moment here to stabilize and give people that are watching on Facebook Live the opportunity to join up. We'll get started in just a minute. Thanks for joining on a Tuesday. At the end, I'm curious if you've been to some of our other events, whether Tuesday works, Friday works. We decided not to go Friday on the holiday weekend. I think probably everybody appreciates that. All right. Everything live is working, Jeff?
Everything live, everything's going well.
All right. We will get started. So welcome everybody to our, I guess, virtual booth visit. This one is buying Dynon Certified, what you need to know. And what we really wanted to do is speak specifically to those of you that are considering or will be considering in the future a Dynon Certified panel featuring Skyview HDX. You'll have probably a lot of questions about what airplanes it's applicable to, what airplanes it's coming to, where you can use the autopilot, where you cannot yet, pricing, configuration, how to install it. We're going to go through all of that. So how this works. So if you're in the Zoom meeting, which it looks like there's 35 or 40 of you here, you're all muted. We can see you, you can see us. We will automatically stop for questions. You can raise your hand if you have a question that you have queued up. You can also type it into the chat, although it's hard for us to get to all of them because there are a few of us that are hosting and then monitoring the Facebook chat as well. So the easiest way to ask a question is with voice when we get to you. To raise your hand, by the way, if you're on a computer, it's under the participants button, and then there's a hand raise. If you're on an iPad or an iPhone, I think it's usually the three dots menu. There's a little raise hand button. And then we'll ask you to unmute yourself if you're in Zoom, and then you will get a little button that says, hey, they want to unmute you. And I think we're all probably getting pros at this these days. Let's see. We will stop periodically for questions. So like if we're talking about, we're going to start out talking about what airplanes, we're going to get to pricing. So if you have a question about a topic we haven't covered at all yet, we're probably going to get there. So hold those questions. So for intros, so I'm Michael Schofield. I'm our marketing director. Co-hosting with me today is Kyle George. He's one of my colleagues from sales. When you do get to the point where you're getting ready to configure an order or ready to buy, you're likely to talk to him or Josh or Dan. Josh is lurking, helping out with some of the question answering today on the Facebook side. And then also with me is one of my marketing colleagues, Jeff. He's kind of playing cameraman director. Most of the things that we're going to talk about today, or actually all of the things, and if not, we're doing a bad job. Everything's on the website. I'll be screen sharing and showing you some of the brochures and some of the literature that is useful, and just kind of showing you the ropes there. Yes, with that, let's just kind of jump right into it. So, Kyle, if somebody is thinking about a Dynon Skyview certified system, what airplane's going to go in?
Well, we do have an approved model list, and we've actually just recently made that a little bit more easy to search on our website, which I'm sure Mike will pull up and share with you here. As a general rule, our STC applies to the majority of single-engine, piston-powered GA aircraft that are under 6,000 pounds gross and with 6 seats or fewer. We also do not have any pressurized or composite constructed aircraft currently on the AML. Those are things that we plan to get to at some point in the future. So if your aircraft checks all of those boxes, you are more than likely on our list. There are a few other exceptions, but by and large, you can see the majority of the aircraft, which is roughly 600 different models, listed out right here on our website. And certainly feel free to message us at sales anytime. If you're not sure and you want us to give you an official answer, we can look for it.
Yeah, and as Kyle said, it's almost every airplane, not everyone, but almost every airplane that's under 6,000 pounds, 6 or less people. So the one that I think I hear the most about, I don't know about you, Kyle, is the air coupe that's missing, and I'm not sure why it's missing. And we have like on our list to add some of these airplanes that should be on there by by category and class, but that didn't quite make the list.
The air coupe's the one exception I know I've been asked about before. I'm not aware of other exceptions, but I'm sure there's one or two out there lurking.
But all of the major airplanes, you know, or the most popular, like almost every Piper, you know, single. Here's like the list of. I think on our list of to-dos, actually break this out to have it a little bit more by common name model. You know, if you have a Cherokee, for example, it's on here, but you got to go find, you know, P28 and then your sub type. So then from there, the next question is, well, you know, what can I put in, you know, my airplane? The answer for all of these is everything we sell, and then Autopilot. There's the Autopilot approval is kind of in addition to the everything but Autopilot. And Kyle, what airplanes do we currently have for the Autopilot approved for?
So right now we have most of your late model 172s. That's anything from model Foxtrot onto model Sierra. That's I believe 1965 up to current. Correct me if I'm wrong on the year, but I believe that's correct. Then for the Bonanzas right now, majority is the V-tails. So your Papa, Sierra, Victor 35 models, and then your V35A and V35B are all currently approved with Autopilot. And hopefully later this year still, we'll be approving the majority of the remainder of the Bonanza family with a number of Model 35s and 36s and some other models as well.
I guess we should talk about, so let's see, if we showed it on this list, let's what's coming up next as well. So yeah, as Kyle was saying, it's Cessna's Foxtrot through Sierra. This covers the airplanes that are still manufactured today, although I guess the current ones are of course all glass paneled, so you're not likely to take out that to put in ours. And then the Bonanzas, it's the P through V35B currently. And so where I'm looking right now on the website is under just the aircraft models link, and you know it has the nearly 600 list. If I click the See Approved Models link, that's where we get this this big giant list. And then here are the models with Autopilot. With the Bonanza, you know, this encompasses quite a few kind of different models, and there are some we can get even more specific with the Autopilot applicability down to the serial number, because there are some exceptions, I guess, due to some variance in the fleet. So if you are going to go Autopilot in you'll want to cross-check, and our team will help you cross-check whether it's one of the models, the serial numbers that it's applicable to. So upcoming airplanes. So we have admittedly been, Kyle, why don't you talk about the Autopilot approvals that are?
They're coming up, sure. So one thing the FAA does require us to do is to do our STC applications one at a time. We can't have multiple applications open at once. And that means there does have to be an order that the things go in. So at the front of the train right now is the PA-34 Seneca. And in terms of a schedule for that, as close as we can say confidently is that we're at the point where we're working out the logistics of getting the test flight operations going again. The FAA offices have been closed for test flying for COVID prevention, and they're at a point now where they're looking at trying to get to the mechanics of getting things scheduled so we can keep moving forward. Beyond that, the A36 Bonanza, which is likely to include a bunch of the early Model 35s as well, is going to be coming in the number 2 position. So once the Seneca's wrapped up, that process will get started. And shortly thereafter, we expect the 182 to be going through the same process. The other aircraft we have in our hangar right now is a Mooney M20. And beyond that, we're undecided as to what the specific next models will be following those.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Kyle said in terms of the, so when we approve the nearly 600 models, the piston singles, you can make an argument, and we did make an argument, that these airplanes are substantially the same, right? They all have very similar systems, the complexity, the way they're flown, the risk profile of the airplane, the weight, the people on board, all of that stuff. So you can, and the panels are all roughly the same size. And so you can make an argument that like basically these airplanes are the same, and so you ask for an STC for an AML or approved model list, and that was our list. With Autopilot, there are actual physical considerations. The brackets have to be engineered. You have to make sure that the brackets you engineer work on the airplanes that you believe that they're going to, whether it's the Bonanza, 35 or 36, A36, and you have to, engineer for the specific models and then verify that. And you really can't do that with, just like a paperwork engineering justification. There's actual real engineering goes into the big AMLs, but there's hard parts that are getting bolted into the airplane with the autopilot install. And so you have to engineer that. You have to prove it. It culminates with, with product engineering documents as flying to verify all of the things that you were going to do and the performance you expect out of the autopilot and all of that you're getting that. And also actual performance of the autopilot itself. It's not just about, it is about safety, but a lot of it is, but there's a performance component as well that actually, flies the airplane as you'd expect it to. Kyle mentioned that we've gone through a couple of different variations of how we communicate this, because we've admittedly been wrong a few times in terms of, what our cadences and what our pace is. And so, with the Piper, Seneca, and the Beechcraft, the A36 expansion on the autopilot, we have here, kind of a wishy-washy progress bar. And also it says first half of 2020. Today is the first half of 2020, the end of it. So we're going to miss that by a little bit, but not by much on the Seneca. And as Kyle also mentioned, this is a serialized thing to some degree. In other words, we have people that are working on the flight test, the engineering. So there is kind of not an assembly line, but there is a sequence here. So the Seneca will go real soon, and the Bonanza is actually still real soon. They're really close to each other. And so we expect those, don't want to give dates because we don't actually know it given the uncertainty around flight testing and some of the COVID related stuff, but it's weeks, not many months. Let's just put it that way for those airplanes. The 182, and so we'll have to update the website obviously tomorrow or this time. The 182 and M20 are still scheduled for this year, and we don't have any further detail on that, but we still believe that that's possible for both of those. Let's see.
Do we want to take a pause here and see if there are any questions, Mike, before we move into installation methods, kind of the next phase of the process?
That's a great idea. So if anybody has any questions here in the Zoom, go ahead and rate, kind of about airplanes. Is it for my airplane? What's coming next? What do you expect for airplane X? Kind of in that zone. If you have questions about that, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and then we will ask, we'll let you unmute yourself. So I see Brent. I'm going to click your unmute button. I think I did.
What I'm trying to figure out is, can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm wanting to get one for the E35 Bonanza. And am I allowed to buy all of the parts except something until the autopilot is released?
So the only real component of the autopilot that we can't sell to you yet is the actual servos and control head for it. The rest of the system in terms of an EFIS, necessary modules, Adsb, engine monitoring, all of that's already available and can be installed. And we can't supply you with.
Panel?
Say again.
The piece that goes on my panel, all that stuff can go in there?
The autopilot control panel, the piece with the buttons on it, yes. Not until the servos are approved as well. But we do have a blank cover that matches the finish of the rest of our modules. So you could have that cut and covered over temporarily. Okay. We do also allow for pre-wiring of the servos. The wiring harnesses can be run under the floor or wherever, excuse me, along with a lot of the other components from the outset, so that when you're ready to add the autopilot when it's approved, it is almost literally attach brackets, attach servo, plug it in, tune it, and you're done.
Good.
Yeah, so the autopilot subsystem, or the approval, encompasses the servos, that control panel, the control panel, and then the brackets that are needed to install them. So those are sort of the hard parts that you can't put in until the autopilot is approved for your model. All right, thanks for that. Let's see, we've got Paul H. I'm going to press your unmute button, and I think you need to hit something, and then, yep, you're good.
Great, can you hear me?
Yep.
You can.
Great, first of all, thanks a lot, you guys, for doing this. This is super informative for all of us, so I really appreciate it. I have a kind of a two-part question. The first part is, I just want to clarify before I end up sending something back that maybe I don't need to. When you said that everything is certified except for your autopilot that you sell, I wanted some clarification on that around angle of attack, pitot tube, I was told today by my mechanic that it couldn't be legally installed on my airplane because it wasn't certified. So if you could maybe clarify that,
Sure.
and then I have a follow-up question.
Sure. So it can be legally done, though it is at the moment not the cleanest of deliveries of that feature, and that's why it's not something that we advertise largely. So the probe itself and the feature of angle of attack are both approved under the STC. What is not approved right now is the generic generic bracket that we manufacture to suspend that probe below your wing. It's designed for an RV-10 or something similar, but is commonly used in the experimental world generically. We also don't have a pre-manufactured plumbing kit that routes the pressure lines and the fittings and everything like that. So part of that stems from just being in a race to get the system in general approved in time for the 2020 Adsb mandate, so that people can install the system at large. And to that end, 2 fewer pieces that you have to STC and PMA makes the process go faster. So an AOA probe is considered a minor alteration, which means the installer has a lot of flexibility on either they can fabricate their own mount for it, they can buy in a Cessna example, you would buy from Textron an OEM replacement pitot mount bracket. The shape and dimension of the pitot probe or the AOA probe that we sell conforms to an AN standard. I believe it's 5812 or 8512 or something like that, which fits your standard Cessna pitot probe mount. So you can buy an STC approved bracket or just a type certificated approved bracket. You can manufacture your own, and then in terms of sourcing the tube materials, you have a ton of flexibility. So it's a little bit more work and knowledge on the installer's side, and it's not as completely packaged of a feature. So it can be there, but a little bit more work has to be done than the rest of the system.
Okay, well, that's a little bit encouraging. So one other kind of just clarification there. Does the heated pitot have any difference as well?
So the only probe that's approved and certified is the unheated AOA bracket, because there are a lot of, and I don't know the specific regulations, but there are a lot of advisory circulars and things to do with the specifics of factory original pitot and static plumbing, and it is feasibly impractical for us to pursue a general purpose pitot probe replacement that is going to be broad, approved for most certified airplanes. So to that end, the original pitot, heated or unheated, remains in place and is used. Our probe is strictly for AOA purposes.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then this is the last question. It comes around what you're probably going to get lots of questions about, which is the Autopilot, because we're all eager to get that feature. So I'm just wondering, is there any chance that for the Cessna 182, whatever models that you get, I'm hoping it would be all the Cessna 182s, since that wing is essentially, you could swap a 182 wing and a 180 wing, is there any chance that the 180 will fall? That's what I have, so I'm selfishly asking this question. Is there any chance the 180 will fall under the 182 certification?
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, the owner of Dynon, John, has a 180 floats and really desires the same thing as you for that reason, that approves both of them. I think, and some of this is a little bit of a moving target as they do the engineering. I think the current story is that they don't expect the 180 to fall under the 182 autopilot approval. That could change, but I believe that's the current from our engineering certification team. Does that match what you've heard lately, Kyle? Yeah,
that does. And I think, I forget, Paul, I think, is who asked the question. You are right on the wing similarity, and it does sound like from the roll axis standpoint, the work done towards a 182 could very likely apply towards 180s and maybe even 185s. One of the big differences I know is when it comes to the pitch servo, your station locations and ribs and whatnot, and different models or other STCs for baggage and stuff like that have effect on the pitch servo location. And additionally, if people or we pursue a yaw servo for it as well, there's additional potential differences in complexion there. So roll, you're right, is very similar. Pitch and others are different, but as as well. The FAA eyes, those are two different airplanes and have to be approached independently.
Okay, well, I appreciate you guys answering. I'm gonna bet on hopefully the owner of the company is gonna have some weight, and so maybe we can get it soon. But thanks a lot.
I mean, yeah, the 180 is definitely happening at some point, and it's a question of order.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I saw Drew from Above Alaska Aviation raising his hands a couple times. I'm sure he wants to know where the autopilot is for the 180 as well, since he just installed the system in one.
Let's see, Greg, you've got your hand up. I think we'll take one more question here from Greg, and then we'll move on to the next section.
Okay, can you hear me, gentlemen?
We can.
Excellent, excellent. I'm a high fan of the Skyview system.
I guess you got me unmuted. So yeah, Drew, above Alaska. That was my question. I was thinking on the same lines as Paul as far as combining the 182 with the 180s and possibly the 185s. But also want to say thank you guys for putting this on. And your systems are amazing. After installing them and flying them, that's all I want to put in anybody's airplane. They're phenomenal. You guys are doing awesome work. It's great to see this happening in aviation.
Awesome. Yeah, and what Drew's talking about is that they installed our system in the Alaska Airmen's Association raffle airplane that was just raffled this year.
Greg, apologies. Back to your question.
That's all right. Recognize what happened there. Love the Skyview. I've installed it in 3 experimentals. Just recently got it installed in our 172, and I've got a friend with a 182 that is not so anxiously awaiting the STC to be totally released. He's chomping at the bit for it. Got a question about the auto trim versus the autopilot. In our 172, when we had it installed, the auto trim is not currently available as told to us by our installer. I understand it is apparently tied with the Bonanza STC. Is that correct? Can you give us some information on that?
Yeah. So if in an example, so it's where we came from, where the Dynon product came from, you would typically pair our autopilot with a Ray Allen trim servo, and you hook that all together to our autopilot control panel, and boom, you have electric trim and auto trim. If you have a legacy system, or let's say a type certificated airplane, and it has electric trim, that usually uses like an older style, big DC motor to run the electric trim, and our system isn't compatible with that out of the box. And so if you have electric trim, what we need is there's a little box that we call a trim amp, which sort of converts our signals of controlling trim to something that can drive those higher current trim servos that are typically employed in certificated aircraft. So that box will be approved with the Bonanza A36 expansion. So a lot of the Bonanzas have legacy electric trim systems that we can't currently connect to, and then we will be able to, and that'll apply to other airplanes as well. So in a 172, if you have mechanical trim, only mechanical trim, that won't necessarily add that feature to you. We won't have our own electric trim system. We will have the ability to control and interface with, for the purposes of the autopilot auto trim, those legacy existing trim systems, if that makes sense.
Right, that was my understanding. We've got the King system in this 172. And we removed, of course, the original servos and put the Dynon servos in there, but we left the trim servos in place, anticipating the release of the auto trim system for that unit.
Yeah, so you're the person that's designed to accommodate.
Okay, well, get after it.
All right, let's move on to the next section, which is, that's autopilot. We talked about that. Installation methods. Yeah. So let's say you've decided to install. How do you install? We have 2 different ways, 2 kind of completely different ways, one of which is unique to us. Kyle, why don't you tell everybody about that?
Sure. So there are, as Mike said, 2 options. One, we do have a direct buy option where you, as the owner of the airplane, can come to us and buy a set of avionics and install and have it installed and signed off by an IA and or a Part 145 repair station to be added to your aircraft. So what that really opens up the door for, kind of the really prime examples are flying clubs where maybe a couple of members are A&Ps and one's an IA, or people are good friends with an IA. Flight schools that have an IA on staff, things like that. And now all of a sudden, in your own hangar with your own donated labor and just a little bit of help from an outside source, you're able to get an installation done for barely over the price of the avionics themselves. And that's been tremendously helpful. A lot of other folks have been taken to their airplane to Bob at hangar number 4 on the field for years, and that's who always works on their plane, and they don't want to go anywhere else. Bob at hangar number 4 can install your aircraft as long as he's an IA, or can work with one who's going to provide him with a sign-off as part of the process. The other option is, aside from a direct purchase, is to go through one of our Dynon authorized installation centers, of which we have, I think, close to 20 named currently, and about 60 or so others that have contacted us and are somewhere along the process of becoming a certified installation center. So these places have installed a number of our systems. Some have worked with experimental and certified both, but they have had their hands on the product, know what it takes to get the job done that you need, and have a good sense of how to package the system to fit around whatever other parts and pieces you may have or be purchasing or trying to keep in the airplane because you like it. So there are 2 avenues. One is much more flexible and open for a lot of different applications and settings. The other one is much more traditional, where you take it to a shop that knows their stuff, you leave your plane with them, and they'll get you a plane that's in the next generation of avionics when you're done.
Great. And just to add on to that, so the ultimate thing you need, whether you're going to one of our authorized installation centers or whether you're doing the direct purchase and using your own mechanic, is somebody that can apply an STC to an airplane. And the basic rule for that is an IA or higher. So if you have one of those, you have a way to install our products. And of course, we're kind of an upstart, or we're now a couple years into the Dynon Certified effort, and some of that that direct purchase path was born out of we didn't have a network of certified shops at our disposal. So as we're working on qualifying people that we get to know and like and trust, and we know do great work, we're going to continue to offer the ability for people to buy themselves. It turns out what we have learned, there are more IAs than you think out there, and a lot of IAs happen to also have home built as well. So we've had a lot of customers throughout the years that have said, well, I've got you an RV, I've got you in my Glass Air, but I also have a 172 or 182, and I just want to put it in my airplane. And so we don't want to make we didn't think it was fair for that guy to have to he can legally do an installation when he shouldn't have to go to a shop necessarily. So it kind of benefits everyone. All right, so any questions on the installation stuff? Coming up next, we're going to talk about the system overview, the pricing, and how everything kind of fits together from a purchasing perspective. So if anybody has any questions on the install paths, raise a hand, otherwise we'll move on.
And Josh, if there are any questions from Facebook you'd like to share, we'd be happy to hear them.
Nothing super pressing at the moment. I'll keep a lookout.
All right.
So we've got one of our
This is one of
DAIC.
our, yes.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, fellas. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Glad to be part of the chat. I work for Chesapeake Sport Pilot. We're a authorized Dynon dealer. I just had the quick question. Do you guys? I've always kind of had this idea, and I plan on instigating it at our maintenance facility. Do you guys have any kind of templates for when you're trying to set up the panel for the customers to install, and like maybe they want it installed a certain way? You can kind of lay it out before you actually cut any holes and kind of get the customer's input on where they want what equipment located.
Couple of things. First of all, there's a CAD program out there called Panel Planner that is available to shops and to customers that has all of our parts. We do also make available for our customers and installers all of the CAD files for the cutout shapes for displays, modules, parts, and pieces, so that you can, if you are using CAD software and have that kind of technology available, can do that. Also, what Jeff is showing, or whoever's screen sharing right now is showing, is our catalogs, which we just got a new batch of, and I'll be sending out to a number of our our installation centers. And certainly if anyone else in the Zoom or Facebook is interested, let us know at the sales office and we can get you one. These have full-size color cutouts of the 10-inch and 7-inch HDX, as well as all of our various panel modules. So, and there are a number of them. So with one catalog, you can take a pair of scissors, go out to your airplane and hold things in place and can really kind of get a sense of how everything looks. When we're normally open for walk-in customers, I can't tell you how many people have walked in with a roll of butcher paper that they traced the outline of their panel in the airplane and have cut it out and are rolling it out on our conference table as we're putting things in place and laying it out just to see, you know, physically, where do I look at things. There's of course an added layer of dimension, which what is behind the panel, you know, what other constraints are there in terms of physically making things fit. But at least to get started with layout digitally, you've got the panel planner program, and then also if you have CAD software of your own, we have the individual files to get you rocking and rolling. Then for hands-on types, we've got the catalogs and a few other things too.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
No problem.
It looks like we've got another question from Rob. I'm clicking your unmute button.
Hello, and thanks like everybody's been saying for putting this on. These are great. So this is a really lousy question, but how many hours does it take to do an install? Because we hear these horror stories of, well, I'm going to spend $23,000 on the hardware, and then you talk to somebody and it's like, yeah, I probably plan on another $20,000 for the install.
Well, let me chime in on that a little bit, and then I may, if he's still here, I think Drew from Above Alaska recently installed a Skyview system, and he may be able to speak a little bit to that from hands-on experience as well. It's important to note first that the answer is it depends. That is the official answer. Sure. A well-seasoned, Dynon knowledgeable installer working with an airplane that doesn't have a rat's nest behind the panel, truthfully could probably get a really basic installation done in the 50-60 hour range if they're really cooking. Okay. Most people at this time are not seasoned Dynons installers, so that's not going to happen. Most airplanes are not beauties behind the panel. Most of them are rat's nests, as many people have come to find. So that's also more than likely not going to be the case. And then there's how complex is the panel? How complex is the system? Does the customer already have Adsb out? Do they already have 2 IFR navigators and or nav comms? You know, are we talking about just a display and an ADAHRS and a magnetometer and a compass? That's easy. Are we talking about 2 screens, Adsb, the comm radio, the this, the that, the other thing, coax and antennas? You're looking at a much larger figure. So I think we state on average anywhere from 90 to 150 hours for a reasonably well-prepared aircraft. Again, that doesn't factor in if you're doing this as part of an annual, all the other things that are happening, or interior upgrades and da-da-da-da-da. So a total bill out the door, a lot of people do see a larger hour figure than they're expecting for just the Dynon part of it, but there is a lot else there too. And that's a difficult thing for us to know for each individual case, just because there are so many variables.
I'll add that we have a project effort going on within Dynon, because the original poster on a wall years ago, it was like it's going to be a 40-hour install, and of course that hasn't materialized, and we're not close to that yet. But our goal is to have that can be installed in dozens of hours, not weeks and months and hundreds of hours. And so we do have some projects going on inside Dynon to get closer to that, including, we already have a lot of pre-manufactured wiring harnesses that go together. We're working on harnesses that are kind of like a super harness that kind of gaggles everything together. So it really is just a lot more, even more of a plug and play solution. We already have a mounting tray that attaches to the back of the panel that's used in certified installations. There's a revision of that coming out, and then another tray that will mount the comm radio and transponder in the legacy radio stack location. So we're doing work towards lowering those hours. We also have a pretty big documentation. you won't appreciate this as the end customer, but we have a pretty big documentation revamp coming along to simplify the documentation so that when somebody is picking up, the wrench on a Dynon system for the first time, it's not going to be as intimidating. Right now our installation manual is pretty big, but there's a lot that we could sort of peel out, some of the things that are auxiliary systems and things like that. Things like having nice wiring, even better wiring diagrams than we currently have. All of our harnesses are already color coded to the harnesses we manufacture, but we are thinking actively about that because there's room to improve there for sure.
I did unmute Drew. I don't know if you kept any hour figures on what your installation was like, but you did a relatively complete system. I think just about everything but autopilot and engine monitoring.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm known for sound issues. Yeah, I mean, it would definitely vary depending on what you got going on. I mean, we essentially stripped everything, including the instrument panel itself, out. Everything was gutted, so there's not a wire left in there. And then we fabricated a whole new panel and designed around the Skyview system. I would say, once we had the panel done, the actual installation of all of the harnesses and the displays and the avionics racks and radios and wiring and all that, it was probably in the 90-hour range. But then on top of that was the whole gutting and fabricating the panel and all of that. So it would definitely vary on each specific project based on how far you're going.
And that's a great data point for what I mentioned earlier. This was Drew's first exposure to the Skyview system, and from a certified or experimental standpoint, as far as I know, and there's a 90-hour comment that matches our kind of our spec. So, and that copacetic in my mind.
All right, let's see. Let's see. Rob's up next. What you got?
No, Mike, I think Rob was
Ron
the
just
one.
put his hand down. Greg does have another question, though.
Okay, there we go. So, Greg, go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to chime in to dovetail with what y'all were just talking about. I didn't get a specific labor hour breakout, but we recently did a 172 at a Dynon install center down in Florida. And we did the entire ball of wax, everything, dual 10-inch HDX screens, got the autopilot, comm radio, EMS, everything you could think of. And so that would include an entire panel redo. This was in an airplane with the KLN 94 and the MFD and the NAV2 autopilot system. And we also added an Avidyne IFD 440, which retails for about $12,000. And like I said, I didn't get a dollar value breakout, but the entire Dynon suite plus the Avidyne plus labor out the door was $49,000 and some change. So you can back into those numbers and figure out what they were putting in for labor hours. But we thought that was a fairly reasonable number, given that we also gained 46 pounds of usable weight in the airplane in the process.
Yeah, we should put that on the price list. It's guaranteed at least 20 pounds of useful load.
Yeah, what's your useful load worth to you per pound?
Right.
$9,000 in this case.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that. All right. Let's see. So we'll move on to the next area, which is kind of talking through the system, the price list, the bits and pieces, the hard parts. We have done other of these virtual booth visits on the features, how to use it. We're not going to go into as much of that today. We'll touch on it just a bit, but we're not going to do a whole lot of button pushing on the panel. This is more about your kind of ready to order, how do things go together. So I'm going to go back to screen share, and we're going to kind of use two things here, both which are available on our website. Give me a second here. So piece number one is our certified brochure, and piece number two is our price list. Let me just show you where you can find those. So under the website, under more product literature, this is literally the same brochure that we would print if we saw you at a show. We'd hand this out to you. It kind of has a little bit of everything. There's two of them actually. There's the certified catalog that has, we'll get back to that. And then the second thing is the system pricing, which is a distilled, it's not part by part, it's like major component by, and the major things that you'd go along with it. And let me show where else, that's under the product literature, but also if we go to, just back to the website and we just go to either pricing, come on website. So if we go to the pricing page, my web browser's having a fit. All right, so we go to the aircraft models page, and we click, and then we go down. The model list is over here, and on the right, this pricing information is the same as the brochure we're about to look at. And then there's also an Excel calculator, which is a little more detailed. We're not going to use that today. So now I'll go to the kind of brochure and the price sheet. Where do you want to start, Kai? Do you want to start with the pricing? And how about tell people, like, what's the base installation, and then we'll
Sure.
break it down into what what the pieces are and what it costs. What do you need to install?
Why don't you pull up the pricing list?
Okay.
There you go. And scroll down a little tiny bit for me there. So a question we get fairly often in the sales office is, all right, look, what's the minimum I can spend to get this system in there? Like how little can I buy if I just got to get this done, but I don't have the time or the budget for a whole bunch of stuff. And what you're looking at on your screen right here is that list. So the bare minimum as defined by the STC requires that you have a display of either size, 1.7 or 1.10, an ADAHARS, which is your attitude and air data computer that's plumbed to pitot and static and angle of attack if equipped, either remote magnetometer, which is your source of magnetic heading, a GPS model 2020, which is what Skyview needs to locate itself on a map, as well as drive the synthetic vision database. That also is your compliant position source for Adsb if you have our transponder. The last piece as far as Skyview is concerned is the backup battery, which provides at least an hour of runtime from the loss of ship's power in flight. Also lets you do things like boot the display up before engine start, so you can check your timers and clocks and watch oil pressure and things like that come alive as you start the engine. The other component required with the Skyview installation is our backup Ifr D10A. And the required components there is the instrument itself, as well as the internal backup battery for it, which also provides about the same amount of runtime. Very commonly purchased items that also go with it because they save more time than they're worth is the shelf tray, which gives you a convenient spot to attach all the essential pieces. Pre-manufactured display harness, which is trimmed to fit for those things that almost every display and installation needs. A USB port extension, which brings one of the two USB ports on the back of the display to the pilot side of the cockpit for data to go up and down, cyclical databases from the FAA, as well as diagnostic reports, data logs, screenshots, things like that. Then we also have a pre-made harness for the D10A, which is quite simply just power and ground. So with a 7-inch display, that equates to this 9865 figure you see, which I round up and say just shy of 10,000. And with an a 10-inch display, you're just over 11,000. So there's sort of your bare minimum. If I just wanted to put this in and nothing else, that's as low as you can spend and still get the required components to get the system installed.
This is just a visual on those parts. You've got, of course, your Skyview display, the backup Ifr D10A, the ADAHARS in the lower left here. That's all of your it's all of the sensors for your primary flight instruments. It's pitot, static, angle of attack, all the inertial sensors, the rate sensors, and the accelerometers that sense attitude and the slip skid ball and the turn rate, and altitude and vertical speed. The remote magnetometer, there actually is a magnetometer in the ADAHARS, but most people find it's easiest, especially in a certified aircraft, to put the ADAHARS behind the panel, because that's where you have all of your, your legacy airspeed and pitot static lines are already routed there. So you put the ADAHARS behind the panel, it also makes it easier to wire. Then you install a remote magnetometer out in a wing or in the rear of the aircraft, depending on what's best for the aircraft. The GPS, let me just zoom in even a little more. The GPS is, one thing that we do uniquely is this is a GPS receiver plus antenna. it's got 4 wires. It has no coax going to it because all of the electronics and the antenna are in one thing. Most other GPS receivers or products have just the antenna remoted, and then you have to have coax that goes back to the, into the navigator. And there has been a history in those products of there being interference and of that GPS signal that have, caused some issues in the fleet. So it's all just data, power, ground, all the low voltage, and then the transmit and receive. That's the battery. It's a small brick, about the size of a little smaller than a baseball, although it's square. So it's not really a baseball. It's like a block of cheese. The shelf tray, that's the current version. There's an improved version that's in the works, and then the USB port, which remotes the stuff to the front. Then you can add on to that. Let's see, an additional display. You want to talk through that, Kyle?
Yeah, a lot of folks ask us questions about what can you do with one display, what can you do with 2. They have this vision of their mind of, well, I want this one small one for just this, and this one over here to be just that, and this one over here to be just that. And the truth is, every SkyView display is equally capable, whether it's a 7-inch or a 10-inch. You can put as much information or as little information on any one screen at once as you want, and you can reconfigure them on the fly. So a common layout is primary flight display on the left, the pilot side screen, probably with the engine band below it. So they've got their basic flight instruments and health of the engine right in front of them. Then a lot of times they'll have the second display either all the way over on the right side or sort of in a central location, and that'll often have the full screen map, or maybe a half screen map with a half screen approach plate next to it. Of course, SkyView does allow up to 3 displays to be installed, so in some applications you can see a PFD, an engine monitor, and a moving map, all full screen with plenty of viewing real estate. So where and how you lay those out, basically my answer to everyone's question is, can it do this, is yes, it can. The question is, what is really the best application for your aircraft? So you've got almost infinite flexibility and adjustability in terms of what you see where. That's great for a single pilot operation, or if you always fly with a co-pilot or a safety pilot, or are in a training aircraft and want to, excuse me, do partial panel. So take all the primary flight instruments over to the co-pilot side, only give the kid learning to fly the engine instruments and the map, and make them hold a heading and do some other things. So you've got a lot of ways to build additional tools into the flexibility of being able to reconfigure the screens really on the fly. So extra screens are just extra screen real estate, and there are a lot of things that you can do with it, and also a lot of capability you can get out of just one screen.
And then, what I was showing a moment ago was a pretty typical, what a Beechcraft Bonanza upgrade might look like. It's got well, let me just go back to it. Spot like that. Yeah, so this is one of our demo panels. If we were at a show, this is what we'd be pushing buttons in front of. So you've got 2 displays, the Ifr D10A. As Kyle said, you can sort of configure anything the way you want. You do have to have the primary flight instruments kind of in front of you, and the engine instruments, kind of the core things that are legally required, have to be in front of you. But then you could sort of do whatever you want over here. You can have the map up here or not. We could go, full screen on that, and then your other bits and pieces. These guys, these other modules, we'll talk about that. They come in horizontal and vertical versions. Then of course you'll pair our stuff with. We prefer an Abadyne and a PS Engineering audio panel, but we'll work with just about anything out there. So cancel that. Go back to the screen share.
That, I think, segues nicely into our next topic was IFR capability, or IFR connectivity. What kind of instruments that we can and cannot talk to. But by and large, just about any IFR GPS out there, our system can connect to. What our system provides to an IFR platform is fundamentally the needles, if you will, your HSI and your vertical navigation, which they'll call VNAV for a GPS or glide slope for an ILS. If it's a GPS that you're connected to, our system is going to display the entire active flight plan. So you get a waypoint list with time, bearing, distance to all your waypoints. The route will be projected onto our moving map, including even a hold pattern, I believe. And so you'll have all of your sequencing visible to you, both spatially and numerically. If they're giving you instructions like report this point or whatever, okay, I'm going to need a report in 30 seconds. That's when I'm going to be arriving at that point and start my descent, or whatever the case may be. Our system does also talk to most modern, and I emphasize the modern term, of nav radio or nav comms, your SL30s, your 255 A or B, just about anything with an RS-232 serial output can activate our HSI and our glide slope. Some of your legacy systems, your King KX155s, your old Narcos or Collins, they have an analog signal that our system is not able to interpret and display. Certainly plenty of people that have those radios and those systems will leave the radio and the indicator head for it in place, and it's existing in a peaceful harmony with the Skyview system, but it isn't actually integrated. So.
Yes, Kyle said most of the modern equipment, the Avidyne IFD, the Garmin GNS, GTN, the new GPS 175, they all work just wonderfully. And then from what you buy in terms of Skyview bits and pieces, there's an IFR connectivity kit. There's a piece of digital interfacing that we need to do that isn't in the display itself, and that's this AirInc module that adds $500. Let's talk through some of the other things. Additional displays. When we talk about some of the other, skip around in not the order of the price list, let's talk about engine monitoring and what that entails, and then we'll go and talk about some of the ancillary systems. So talk us through engine monitoring, Kyle.
Sure. So engine monitoring, fundamentally, Skyview is approved as a primary engine indication. All of your common engine requirements, from RPM, oil pressure, temperature, manifold pressure, oil pressure, all of the common indications can be viewed. Many are able to be discerned natively by the Skyview, like voltage or RPM, things like that don't require a specific sensor. What we'll get back to on the pricing sheet in a minute goes over the sensors and probes that we do offer for our system, as well as prefabricated harnesses that are, generally speaking, trimmed to fit, so that it's a lot less time on the installer to fabricate those harnesses and connect them to a bunch of different sensors and probes. So the system consists of the EMS module itself, which is a few inch square, 4 inches by about 8, maybe about an inch thick. I'm sure he's got a picture of it there. Oh yeah, on the left. That's the module itself. Right next to it, you see some of the harnesses and specific sensors and probes. So the engine monitoring system does a lot more than just your engine. It can tap into a number of aircraft systems. Each module has, I believe, at least 8 general purpose inputs, which you can configure to be a fuel tank level sensor, or a gear position indicator, or a trim or a flat position indicator, or a pitot heat contact, or insert general purpose use here. You can tell it you're a contact, you're a level, you're a pressure, you're a temperature, and it'll be able to report it to you. You can define alarms based on that, so you can be alerted to things that you want to. So a lot of flexibility there. You have roughly 8 to work with. So if you've got a nose, a left, a right gear, and an in-transit, all that require their own contacts, that's going to consume 4 of them, which means if you've got a main, an aux, and a tip tank that all have sensors in them, you're not going to be able to monitor all of those at once. So you kind of have to pick and choose what all you want to utilize through the general purpose inputs or traditional other indicators. But you have a ton of flexibility, and we offer the kits that give you all new sensors and probes and the pre-made harnesses for very competitive prices. As you can see here, adding engine monitoring to a Skyview system is, for a common 4-cylinder engine, only about a $1,800 proposition, and still under $2,000 for a 6-cylinder engine, which in the industry is rock bottom pricing.
And that includes the entire fuel computer, the fuel flow transducer. That's what's really nice about when you choose an integrated system like Skyview, is you start with already an affordable PFD and backup set of flight instruments, at that sort of $10,000 price point, but then adding the incremental bits and pieces like a full engine monitor. It's not, let's say, an additional $3,000, $5,000, $7,000. There are engine monitors out there in all of those price brackets. We do it for under 2,000 in basically for all cases. And they are, I would argue, even more feature rich because it can tie into a lot of the other stuff on the GPS and give you things like your range till empty, because we know GPS speed and we know what your fuel flow is. So we can kind of integrate these different sensors and give you a lot more situational awareness. That's engine monitoring. Let's whip back up the price list and talk through additional displays. So here are some of the other features and bits and pieces. You want to walk down this, Kyle?
Yeah, sure. So again, really common question we get in sales is Adsb. Okay, I gotta have it. I've been putting it off. I'm tired of filling out the ADAPT programs or getting yelled at or whatever. So what do I gotta have, and what can I have as well? So fundamentally speaking, Adsb out is constituted by a transponder that is blipping out your location and information, pressure, altitude, like they have for years, but now also a whole bunch of other information from the GPS in the system, like my altitude and my wingspan and my aircraft type and my tail number and all this other fun stuff. So the transponder, our model, transponder model 261, is an extended squitter, which is a power thing. It's a strength rating, essentially, that is blipping out a strong enough and a high enough integrity position source to comply with Adsb requirements in the US. So that gets you compliant to fly into most airspace here in the USA and in several other countries as well. Additionally, you have the option of getting Adsb in, which is going to bring traffic and weather, both as weather radar, but also as METAR into the Skyview system as well. So traffic is projected both on the moving map as well as on the PFD. So you get a three-dimensional target flying across in front of you to help you spot them. You would also get traffic that's color-coded on the moving map based on its threat level as well. There's kind of a puck shape that's around you that's defining what aircraft you're being alerted to. Whether you get, weather radar displayed on the moving map, which you can toggle on and off. If you don't want to clutter the screen, you don't have to have it there. Also, each airport that has a weather reporting of some variety will have that METAR listed, both in a coded or decoded means, nearest terminal area forecast and nearest reported winds aloft. So you can really do some flight planning, decision making, and that kind of thing. I saw a question just pop up on the Zoom chat. Yes, it can be shared with tablets.
Yes, and so basically your Adsb in and out and transponder, those things together are these two kind of sub kits, which are just slightly over $3,000.
One other question a lot of people ask is has to do with like, well, I already have one piece of that. So our system is only able to get Adsb in from our own components right now. So if you have a Lynx or a Sentry or something like that, our system is not able to use that input to project traffic on the map. Let's see. Similarly, you don't have to have our Adsb out to have our Adsb in. You can have either one or both. So if you've already got a transponder of some variety that's checking the box of Adsb compliance, but you're tired of your battery-powered Stratus and your iPad for traffic, you can have our Adsb in receiver, which is only about $900 for the module and antenna and the pre-made harness for it. So very, very much the system is flexible to work around other components and systems that you have already.
All right, and then the last couple of things. Oops, I just broke the screen share. 1 second. The last couple of items, the major components are the comm radio and the dedicated knob panel. While you're talking about, go ahead and talk about them, and I'll spotlight them on the panel as well.
Sounds good. So there are more little 5-minute tutorial videos that kind of show you a little bit more specifically about what these things can do. The comm radio is a wonderfully feature-enabled comm radio. It is comm only. So a lot of people wonder if our radio is nav as well, and it is not. So the comm features, you have an ATIS, an ATC, a tower, and a ground button on the comm panel itself. And those use the aeronautical database that is in the Skyview itself to pre-populate frequencies for you based on either a whole airport, or it will frequency confirm what frequency you're on. So if you dial in a frequency, it's going to say, the nearest one of this is this airport code and this weather station.
I'll do a quick little demo of that. This is like one of my favorite features in Skyview because it's quite different than other comm radios. As I like to say that I've flown from Seattle, Washington to Oshkosh, and have never, you can still do this. You can still spin in frequencies, but you just never ever need to. Instead, you just press the airport button, and then it's saying nearest. The nearest airport right now is the Skagit Bayview, which is a KBVS up here in the Pacific Northwest. And so now I've loaded that airport in. From here, I just use the 4 buttons to pull up the frequencies I want. So if I'm, 20 miles out, I might grab the ATIS. So I push the ATIS button, or AWAS in this case, and then standby frequency slot. I just click here, it flip-flops. I get closer, I'm gonna ask, contact tower or Unicom in this case, and flip-flop. And then once we, are on the ground, if there was a ground, that would be there here, where this is not a controlled airport, so there is no ground frequency. And then similarly, there's almost always a departure and approach frequency that's associated with the airport that you can use there. So as you're flying along, you just say, what's my nearest airport? It's that one, and what's the frequency I want to listen to, whether it's tower or CTAF. And that's basically the way you use the comm radio.
And one other great feature of that radio, as you saw it, Mike, was pushing the knob in to click to change from active to standby frequency. And one other great feature of this radio is that you can push and hold the button in, and it'll activate what we call dual watch. So it will listen to both the active and standby frequency simultaneously. So this is great if you're talking to approach, want to pick up ATIS, or are on talking to ground and want to pick up ATIS, or let's say you're flying in formation or nearby with some other people, you have your air-to-air frequency on one and whatever your control frequency is on the other. The other panel up there you see, there's 2 of them. The one that's available to every certified Dynon system is the 3 knobs. We call that the SV knob panel. So that gives you a dedicated knob for heading or track, a dedicated knob for an altitude bug, and a dedicated knob for barometric setting, or your Colesman window, as many of us know it. All 3 of those knobs are push button as well. And as you push heading or altitude, as one would expect with industry standard, that is going to bug your nearest altitude or your present heading. So, applications for that are just, you haven't been using the heading bug, but now you want to, you don't want to spin it around from the bottom. Click it in, give it a couple twists to the direction you want to go, and there you are. This is great and helpful for cross country, especially helpful for students in flight training. Again, as we have put our system in a number of 172s, which are largely your flight training operations. Windrift circles, turns around to points, lazy 8s to configure your coordination maneuvers and holding altitude. These provide tremendous benefit. Then as well, moving into the panel that's to the right of it, which is the autopilot control panel. If it is an autopilot approved and equipped aircraft, the autopilot is able to follow the heading or the track bug and altitude bug as well. So they're useful with an autopilot, but do serve a lot of purposes with a non-autopilot equipped Skyview installation as well.
You want to talk through, I'll bring us back to
while you're doing that, one thought I did, I forgot to touch on, the baro knob has one of probably the coolest features, I think, of the whole system. When you're on the ground at, let's say an airport that doesn't have an ADSB ground station, your ADSB receiver may or may not be receiving information until you're airborne. So while you're taxiing, you can click and hold that baro knob in, and it's going to sync your pressure altitude to the present GPS altitude so that those 2 are in sync. Then that same push button action, again, once you're airborne, is going to find the nearest broadcast METAR and load that figure in. Or if your destination airport is within 20 miles from a flight plan, it will grab that METAR and plug that in so that you're already synced up by the time you arrive. So very, very slick feature, I think, with the baro knob. confirms that they're with the airport code in the window.
And coming back full circle, the bits and pieces that you would install, here they are. So the comm radio is $2,200. The dedicated knob panel is $250. And then the autopilot, I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more for the aircraft that have it available in a second, but it's $550.
Yeah.
And then
we are touching on 5 o'clock here. Do we want to open up and see if anybody has some questions that they've been yearning to ask?
All right, we've got Brent. How are you, Brent? So Brent, you should have on your screen, there you go.
Oh, he's unmuted.
Yep.
I do. So when we're getting ready to buy, do we have to go to some other place to buy the STC, or is that all just done through you?
It's all purchased together, whether that's through an installation center or if it's a direct buy purchase. It's just a line item on the invoice that you pay for. There is a form that we will send you, and actually I'm glad you asked that because I don't think we'd mentioned to bring that up. As part of the process for every certified airplane, there's a form that we send out for either you or the installer to fill out where you say, this is all my information about me as the owner, this is the airplane's tail number and serial number, etc. And this is the person who's going to be installing it. And all of that gets copied over to the STC permission statement, which is the legal document that grants you, a specific owner of a specific airplane, permission to install our system and use our STC. So that's just a checkbox in the process that we do with everybody, whether it's a certified installation center or a direct purchase.
Okay, and I see that you have some of these people are buying the 2 ADHARs. Are you having ADHARs fail? Or
no,
is that recommended for each screen?
Actually, for certified, the redundant ADHARs is not yet available. That is something that we'll be bringing to certified eventually, but that's just something that stems from the experimental world.
And have you had any issue with them?
Not any kind of repeatable, consistent issue. Really, we just wanted to make it I believe it stems from people were buying and configuring 2 ADHARs and wondering how they couldn't make it work. And I think we said, well, we could probably make this able to run 2 ADHARs. People want redundancy in everything. So for your hard IFR equipped aircraft in the experimental world and hopefully soon in the certified world, dual ADHARs will be available. But it's not a mitigation from a known issue so much as a customer request for endless redundancy.
Yeah, I would say it's if you were flying an airline, you're going to have 3 or 4, some of which are networked and are cross-checking each other, attitude sources, and you're going to have some standby backups that are completely independent. And similarly, if you're flying, let's say, a 1979 Cessna, you're going to have your vacuum-based gyro, you'll have your electric-based turn and bank, and so you have kind of these similar systems. So within Skyview itself, even just going back to the last decade for our home built, the dual ADHARs came out from just a redundancy need. And one of the nice things about, this doesn't apply to certified yet, but one of the nice things about having dual ADHARs is they do actually cross-check each other. So if you do have an issue, any product has some failure, rarely, and they are rare, but they do happen. Or even just like a pitot leak or something like that affects, one but not the other, depending on the location. So what the redundant ADHARs lets us do is, one, you've got a backup source in case you have a hard failure, but you also have a cross-check algorithm that's saying, the attitudes aren't the same, or the turn mates aren't the same. You then get a cross-compare screen, which you can choose which one you want to make your active and primary. In certified, we have a slightly different solution. So you do want to have, even in a Skyview equipped panel, it's always good to have a independent and dissimilar system. And most people do that even in an IFR equipped Skyview installation. In the certified, it's kind of built into the minimum system configuration, and that's through just to spotlight the panel real quick. That's through the combination of the ADHARs that's connected to the Sky and the Ifr 10A, which has its own internal ADHARs. And so in a certified framework, the dual ADHARs has some complexity in terms of the way it gets approved. So that's why it isn't there on, call it day 0 or even now. So you do have kind of multiple ADHAR sources built into the system as a whole, which is these 2 things together. That's a great question. Let's see, Bill, do you have Bill, let's unmute you.
Oh, hi. So I know that Kyle mentioned that even those of us not fortunate enough to be on the AML for autopilots yet can pre-wire for autopilots.
We're allowing that, Bill, for the airplanes that we have currently in the hangar. So if it's one that we are actively working on, we'll let you get the autopilot servo wiring harnesses. So that's your Bonanzas, your 182s, and your Moonies. Whenever we pick up an Avion, you will be my first call.
All righty. Okay, I was just curious about that pre-wiring. Not that it's that hard, and you know, it's amazing how simple busing all of this stuff in the Skynet. Is it Skynet?
Skyview
SVNet.
network.
Yeah, Skyview
Skynet's
network.
the Terminators that are going to take us
Different
all
thing. It's amazing how much simpler that makes life, and it's something that I suggested to somebody several decades ago, and they just didn't understand. So you guys have got it.
All right, thanks for that. Let's see, we've got
Chuck was next, I think.
All right, Chuck, here's your unmute.
Myself? All right. To follow up on a question in the group chat. So if you have an STEC 50 and your Bonanza isn't certified for an autopilot yet, can you put in your system and run your autopilot back through your current NAV, your 450 or 530?
So our system is not approved to provide the attitude source that most of your or all of your third-party autopilots require. So some have an internal attitude source. I believe your TrueTrax and I think a Trio utilizes their own version of an electric turn coordinator as like your autopilot control head. But for any of the systems that require a attitude source that's certified, the only way to keep a system like that working is to keep the instruments that make it work. So that's usually your vacuum pump and your artificial horizon and directional gyro. So you can keep those systems working. It comes at the cost of the weight savings benefit of losing those parts and pieces, at least in the interim. But the two can exist in peaceful harmony, but one does not drive the other.
All right, thank you.
And Paul. Paul, you're up next.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I got when you showed the video of the D10, it reminded me I wanted to ask a question about that. So I also want to clarify, did you say that the D10 has its, I only caught part of what you were saying when you were talking about the ADHARs. Are you saying that the D10 has its own ADHARs or?
Right. Yeah. The D10A is kind of a self-contained. The 10 in the product name is it's kind of like 10-in-1 flight instrument. So like all of the flight instruments are built inside, right into the can that's behind the panel. So it has all the rate sensors, the accelerometers, the pitot, static air data computer. It has the capability of doing magnetic heading, but not in the certified installation. So it's kind of a self-contained set of flight instruments that's with a 4-inch screen.
Okay, great. And then the follow-up on that about the D10A is the HDX. It's a beautiful system. The D10 kind of looks, when you put it next to the HDX, it kind of shows its age. Is there, I know you can't release too much on future stuff, but is that something you guys are thinking about as far as kind of updating that old reliable but old-looking instrument?
There's always a future product. Let's put it that way. There's always a future product, and never count on technology standing still, especially in avionics. We're really proud of the fact that our products have long lifespans. The D10A, as you said, it's how old is it? It's over 15. Yeah, it's 2003, I think, is when it started shipping. So it's coming up on it's 15 plus. So it's probably our best-selling product ever. It's still a fantastic product and performs super awesomely. There's always a future product. We don't have anything to announce right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Let's see.
If you've got time for one more there, Mike, there was something in the Facebook chat.
Yeah.
And maybe you didn't quite expand on it fully. Airing 429 questions in terms of what all can be shared between something like a 430 or a 530 to the Skyview and vice versa.
Yeah, so as Kyle said, there are a set of technical mumbo jumbo like ARINC labels, which are kind of like data widgets that get passed back and forth. And the prime ones that get passed back and forth are the ones that relate to navigation, which are your course deviation, your course direction, your flight plan, legs, which contains enough information for us to draw the flight plan on our map. There are some other things like I think pressure, altitude, and I forget all of them off the top of my head, to be honest, but there's like pressure, altitude that goes back and forth, and I forget which direction, and there's a few others. We do have on our wiki a list of those labels that go back and forth, but it's primarily centered, the main capability is centered on that nav information. And if it's a NavCom, a GPS nav, it'll have the radio-based information as well. So the VOR, CDI, the ILS, CDI, and glide slope. So that's the main thing. Was there any specificity to like what a particular piece of information that he was looking for?
I think the main information they were looking for was what can be from the Skyview to the 530, as in what information can go Skyview to Navigator.
I believe about the only, and I could be a little bit off, but pressure altitude, which is used for an LPV approach, and also OBS, your Omni-Bearing Direction Selector, going back to the nav radio, are the only two usable ones that I know. I know you cannot edit or manipulate a flight plan, a GPS flight plan from the Skyview to a Navigator. That information is all one way from the Navigator over to Skyview to be displayed.
Yeah, this is a page from our wiki, which is admittedly the wiki in general is fairly out of date and not maintained a whole lot. But this is a document that describes the things that it's at least this many things. So again, this hasn't been updated in a while, but it's at least this many things: the course heading, altitude, pressure altitude, bow corrected altitude, so different variants of altitude, airspeed, true airspeed, total air temperature, because a lot of the navigators do incorporate this into their own computing, magnetic variation. So we send this to the ARINC, to the external navigator, and then these are the things that Skyview consumes to use everything. All of these things, for example, make up your CDI, and then you've got time and deviation. This is your localizer, your glide slope. And then graphical things. This is the flight plan bits and pieces. So these are kind of the technical, the version, and they're pretty understandable. And that's under wiki.dynonavionics.com. And then there's a ARINC 429 labels. And it might be more than this these days. I'm not sure whether it is, but this is the core list of things that go back and forth. All right. Let's see. Let me get my bearings again. I've lost the screen that has our program. There we are. Let's see. So we talked about legacy systems. What do we not provide ourselves? So the Skyview is basically everything in your panel, with the exception of an IR navigator and an audio panel. So if I just jump back out to the panel view one more time, this is kind of how a typical Skyview certified panel is going to look when you're done with it. It's going to have flight instruments, map, engine, comm radio, Adsb in and out, transponder, backup flight instruments. These guys are optional but highly recommended. And then the two kind of components are whatever your IFR navigation source is. There's a Navidyne 440 and then an audio panel to tie everything together. One thing just to make really clear, Skyview does have a complete flight planning and mapping engine built into itself. It just isn't certified for providing the GPS IFR navigation. But if you're not on an IFR flight plan, I basically promise you what you're going to do is you're going to go into the nearest list. You're going to go find where you're getting your hamburger. You're going to pull up information about the airport. You might check the weather because it's so easy. It's touchscreen. You're going to say direct to, and you're off. And then when because we have the touchscreen map, you're going to check your airspace, and it's so much easier than most other devices. Although I have to admit the Avidyne interface is really awesome too. But it is centered more around your IFR procedures and that flight regime. So if you were equipping, and you don't have to equip with one of those IFR navigators either. If you did have a Cessna 150 or 172 and you're never going to go IFR, you can leave a space for that for the future. A lot of people actually do that in experimental land these days when they think they might get an IFR navigator someday. They might leave a spot in the panel and then just use Skyview's built-in navigation capability most of the time. Is there anything you want to add to that, Kyle?
Actually, I was going to jump our checklist a little bit because it seems like it applies, and talk about what kind of navigation and mapping databases come for free and what you can get additionally. So what one sees on either of the displays Mike's got up there is it's a base map, which underneath it all is black for land, blue for water. And then on top of that, we have a colored shaded topographic map, which is also what the synthetic vision database is looking at. Then rastered on top of that, you see airports, airspace, beacons, IFR fixes, all of these kind of stuff, how I commonly describe as the meat and potatoes from a sectional. But read here, not a actual sectional itself. So what you see here is what we give you for free, including the FAA data that updates cyclically every 28 days or 4 weeks from the FAA. That's a simple download a file to our USB stick, plug it into the display, copy the files over, and you're done. What you can get additionally for a subscription from a couple sources are actual approved charts. So from Seattle Avionics for around about $100 a year, you can get a sectional IFR low and IFR high background map. And Mike, if you're looking for that, I think it's under the menu map layers. Yeah.
Yeah,
there we go.
Reconfiguring.
Yep. So now you actually see the sectional itself, which is important to note that when you're looking at that, often many of us like to have track up, but if you are looking at track up on a sectional chart and you're not going due north, all of your text is going to be sideways. So a common thing people do is when they're looking at the sectional, they use the north up compass that Mike's tapped on right there to swap the screen from being a track up to a north up so that you're still able to read everything. Just as he has a sectional for VFR purposes, you can pull up an IFR low or an IFR high chart. The chart subscription also gets you geo-referenced procedure plates. So these are your departures, your RNAV or ILS approaches. You can have them up there. You are geo-referenced. And spin the heading bug for them, Mike, so they can see how awesome that is. So if you've been given an intercept that you want to go to, you can grab that heading bug and turn that big blue line and just land it right on whatever it is you're wanting to go to. And if you have the autopilot, you're already heading there. If you're flying by hand, you've got an easy bug to follow to get where you're going while you make the next moves, maybe in the IFR navigator. So as well, airport diagrams are also included in that list. And so you can get a geo-referenced plate there to see exactly where you are. There's a pretty cool feature where once you have a plate loaded up as he does now, if you click and hold one of the knobs, it'll temporarily hide that screen. And then as soon as you land and you're taxiing off, you click it again, and it's going to bring that plate right back up so you can taxi where you go as ground or whoever is telling you, right on left, right on alpha, do this, do that, and the other thing. Jump in circles, all that.
And one other thing about the airport diagrams is that Seattle Avionics subscription, which is only $99 a year, which gets you the sectionals, the IFR low, the IFR high, all of your procedure plates, all of the FAA airport diagrams, but it also has Seattle Avionics acquired the flight guide diagrams. So these are, I think it's almost somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 airports. Basically, most of the airports you have airport diagrams for. That basically blows away any of the competition, which often have like the FAA ones plus maybe a few other high traffic. But this is Harvey Field, just east of Payne Field. It's a 2,500-foot runway. You don't need an airport diagram because there's really only one way around the ground, but you still have it, for figuring out parking and there's often usually a legend for the main features on even small airports. That's super useful. And again, geo-reference, if we were on the ground here, you'd see the airplane just taxiing all around.
And for those that are international or maybe come from an airline background, you can also get Jeppesen chart data and use it on Skyview. It's at quite a higher premium than many of us are interested in, but both options are available.
All right. Is there anything we haven't covered? One thing to clarify, I think we already said this, but it's kind of a frequently asked question, like what do I need to install? And the answer is the core system is, let's see, do I still have, I don't have the panel up. The core system is, just reset here. The core system is the primary flight instruments, and of course you kind of get the map for free because it has all of the the GPS and all the databases are all just kind of built into the system, and the backup flight instruments. You don't even have to have the engine monitor. You don't have the transponder or autopilot. So that core system, that's the minimum installable unit, and that's that just under $10,000 to start. And then everything else adds on as sort of feature chunks. And that's if we go back to just real briefly our price sheet. Let me go back to screen share. That's how this price list is laid out, which is here's the core system. If you were to add an additional, that's your about $10,000 or $11,000 with the bigger screen. Additional displays add $3,000 to $4,500 plus the bits and pieces. ADSB in and out together, that's your kind of $3,000. Com radio, knob panel, we talked about those. Skyview network cables.
Ooh, let's talk about Skyview network cables for a second.
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good, let's do that.
Okay. So this is a question a lot of folks have, and the answer isn't a one sentence straightforward. Again, the answer is it depends. We'll be able to tell you based on the parts and pieces you're getting how many network cables you need, the lengths that you're going to need, and these are the white cables with the black connectors that you see connecting a bunch of these parts and pieces. The lengths really truly vary from one installation to the next. One 172 might use a totally different layout than another 172 of the same year, make, and model. So there are a couple strategies people employ in approaching the network cables. Most commonly is we make a sort of an educated guess on what's probably going to be the right lengths, and we may need to exchange one or two before the job's done. Option two is hold off on ordering any of the network cables until you get things located and have a sense of what lengths you're going to need. And then option three, which is what some of our installers prefer actually, is that we offer the network cables in long lengths, like up to 25 feet of network cable, that they can then trim to fit and make each cable a custom length for the application. So depending on what installer you're going to or doing yourself, any of those three avenues are, of course, acceptable, or whatever other route you may want to go about it. But figure on anywhere from about $300 to $400 or maybe even $500 worth of network cables in terms of budgeting. And the way we pre-check our pricing calculators, those Excel spreadsheets, is with sort of here's what's probably going to fit most applications. Each person may have a little bit different, but that's something that we're very flexible on exchanging cables on. So no risk there in worrying that you got the wrong cables. We're happy to swap those out.
And just to demonstrate, these So Skyview network is this dual redundant data and power network. So instead of, and it uses a D9 that is kind of traditionally used for old school serial, but it's not old school serial. We kind of use the wires in a different pattern for those that are kind of engineering its dual redundant RS-485. So what's nice is that it's monitoring both of the data channels. And so let's say you did have over time some, like a rib or something that the wire frays on. As it cuts it, it knocks out one of the data channels. Skyview notices it. It throws up a warning. You have no loss of system capability. And most of the major components. So here's that tray we talked about earlier with ADAHARS and the AirInc module and the engine monitor, the battery. But all of these, you can see, let's see if I can get the angle. Yeah, there we go. All of those are connected via Skyview network. So are all of the displays. That's these two connectors there. Each display has 2 Skyview network connectors. What's nice about that is, and so do all of the modules like the AP panel and the knob panel. And what's nice about that is you can start daisy chaining things together. So, and then we all do have, and most installations, the complete installations, like full featured installations, will use one of these hubs, which is just kind of a port 9-pin connector for that. So Skyview network.
I think we've gone over the majority of our topics. I don't know if we have any more questions working in Zoom or any from Facebook, but we've gone over a lot of the common questions from certified customers.
Yeah, we're at 5:30, so we're happy to, if anybody wants to raise their hand or and ask any question. Josh and Jeff, are there any other questions that are so far unanswered?
I think Josh had one that he had mentioned. I just can't seem to find it now. Josh, you want to ask him that question?
Yeah, it's about the D10A.
Yeah, it was cross-sharing D10A versus Skyview.
Yeah, so there's an architectural thing there, which is a little bit certification based and a little bit, the idea is that you want to have dissimilar and completely separate sources of instruments. And there are some other certification considerations which are a little deeply technical, but essentially, no, they are completely separate. They don't talk to each other at all, which does mean that should Skyview experience a failure, you still have the D and vice versa. Should the D10A experience a failure, you still have Skyview. They're completely independent. There's no relying of whether GPS or air. The only thing they do share, because air data has to come from your pitot static lines. If you have an airplane where the architecture is you have split off pitot static lines, that would maintain into your Skyview installation. If you had an airplane where you had, let's say, previously dual airspeed indicators that had completely separate pitos and plumbing and all of that, that would maintain as well. So that sort of goes along with the system design. In most small airplanes that we're going to be equipped in, you're going to have probably only one airspeed indicator. You now graduated to 2 that both use the same pitot source. Any other questions from either the chat or people that are in Zoom? Now would be the time to raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll wind it down.
Oh, there's one.
There we go. Just in time.
This will be my last one, I promise. Do you happen to have any, either like on that demo system you have, or maybe a link you can point me to, a visual of what the angle of attack looks like on the HDX?
Yeah, I can show you. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's in all of our brochures. So if you just get any brochure from Dynon Certified, .com, there's that. But here's, if I can get it up close. Sorry, 1 second. So it's this. So this is showing kind of a kind of maybe econo cruise. So this bar fills up when the angle of attack is low, and then it erases those green lines, and then eventually you end up with these kind of push chevrons that are first yellow and then red, and then that little missing triangle will start flashing red when you get to critical. It's a really neat display, but frankly, I almost never look at it. You also have Audible Alert that sounds, it's like a Geiger counter that, but more of a pleasing tone. So as you do your, as you do your round out and flare, you'll kind of get like a, beep, 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 beep. And then right as you're about to touch down, if you've calibrated it well, it'll go to a solid tone. So when I'm you know, kind of in the final stages of a you know, where I'm trying to actively manage energy, I'm just listening. I'm not looking at the display at all, but that's what it looks like.
Great, thank you.
All right. Well, last chance for questions. Going once, going twice. Oh, there we go. in by the buzzer.
Yeah, there was a question in chat, and I don't remember the answer to it, about Skyview failure modes. Like, what if you lose? What if your pitot freezes over? I know that there's some things that Skyview does that kind of generate instruments out of what it knows from GPS and what it knows from whatever remaining sensors it has.
Yeah, there aren't any, and you'll hear this in the news probably if you're an aviation news geek, because Boeing is you'll hear a notion of like synthetic airspeed or something like that. Skyview doesn't do any of that. Airspeed, altitude is altitude, so they're only pitot-static based things. The ADAHRS is only coming from the attitude sensors, the rate sensors. The thing that you'll hear people discuss is that the attitude indicator uses, you know, the solid state non-moving sensors and a bunch of math and algorithm, and the algorithm uses airspeed as kind of a cross-check to make sure the attitude is right. It's kind of part of the math equation. So you need airspeed for the attitude to work properly. If you had a frozen pitot and you lost airspeed, Skyview will revert to using GPS just for the purposes of generating a valid attitude, so a valid artificial horizon. So if you did have a frozen pitot, your airspeed indicator would reflect that. You would still have there are things, I'll spotlight the panel. So one thing you never want to do is you never want to have misleading information. So where Boeing, for example, has the notion of synthetic airspeed, where they create this number out of well understood aircraft parameters and other things, and like $500,000 inertial sensors. You can't really do that in these sorts of in our avionics. So if you do have a frozen pitot, this will go away, but you still do have some information about speed. True airspeed, of course, is dependent on your pitot as well, but ground speed isn't. Ground speed is just GPS. So you still have this. Now, this works for most purposes. It doesn't work. You don't want to be looking at this as the number to trust when you're on short final managing your energy, because this is going to be wrong by the amount of wind that you have, whether it's a headwind, tailwind, or crosswind. But as a general sense, in a small aircraft, except when you're at altitude, these numbers aren't usually drastically different. So you still have some backup facility, even if you had the failure of a pitot or an iced up pitot, or the failure of your heated pitot in a certified case.
Does it figure out that, yeah, I've got a GPS is only going to give you ground speed. So, but it doesn't. So it's like the steam gauge. It doesn't say, hey, I've got a frozen pitot. It just behaves in a way that instrument pilots can figure out, because that's one of the things they've drilled on.
Yeah, that's true. So the determination of that would largely the existing things that you've learned. As we mentioned before, the system, but not in certified form today, does have the ability to use dual ADAHRs, and in that case, when you have discrepancies, it can hint about that. There isn't, you're actually prompting a feature that we have discussed, which is, is there a way to determine algorithmically or electronically that you have certain kinds of failures, like an iced up pitot, where your airspeed is kind of departing from truth by comparing to things like GPS speed or taking into account recent accelerations. You can imagine things to do that. So we don't currently have that capability, but it's things that we've thought about and continue to.
Thanks.
All right. With that, I think we thank you for coming today. We do these kind of every week or two, our virtual booth visits. We advertise them on Facebook, and we send emails. If you're not on our newsletter, go to dynonavionics.com and then sign up for the newsletter. We also list them on our website. So we have it used to be a flying event schedule. Right now it's an online event schedule. We don't have the next one scheduled just yet. It'll probably focus on our advanced flight systems products, as well as the pre-built panels that they make, which are called advanced panel. That's likely to be the topic. Are there any topics that you guys want to hear us do in the future? And if I'm just going to turn off you can unmute yourself as of now if you just want to unmute yourself. And if there's anything you want us to discuss in the future, or an idea for topics or things you want more or less of, if anybody has anything, now's the time to let us know. And if not, you can email us as well. You could reach Kyle at the general sales desk at sales@dynonavionics.com. I'm just Mike at dynonavionics.com. And with that, thanks for joining tonight, and have a good 4th of July weekend.